The Chinese Foreign Ministry has issued a firm response to the latest strategic cooperation between the United States and Australia, a sweeping agreement on critical minerals that Washington says will secure clean energy supply chains, but which Beijing views as an attempt to curb its influence over the global market. At a routine press briefing in Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun addressed the issue head-on, delivering a statement that reflected both economic caution and geopolitical concern. He entered the ministry's press hall before an audience of reporters, signalling that China's stance would be one of restraint, yet unmistakably firm. Guo began by emphasizing that global production and supply chains, especially for key minerals, are not designed by politics but by market dynamics. He said, the formation of global production and supply chains is the result of market forces and business decisions. Countries rich in key mineral resources should play an active role in ensuring the security and stability of industrial and supply chains and in maintaining normal economic and trade cooperation. His message underscored Beijing's long-held belief that economic systems should remain free from political interference and protectionist alliances. The spokesperson's comments came days after US President Donald Trump and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese signed a new critical minerals agreement in Washington. The deal, part of a broader push to reduce Western dependence on China's mineral processing, focuses on lithium, nickel and rare earth elements essential for electric vehicles, clean energy systems and advanced defense applications. For the United States, the partnership marks a milestone in rebuilding self-reliant supply chains. For China, however, it signals a coordinated attempt by Western nations to reroute trade flows and diminish its central role in global manufacturing. Guo's tone shifted when he was asked about the growing strategic links between Washington, Canberra and London, the so-called AUKUS alliance. Responding directly, he said, the Chinese side has repeatedly stated its position regarding the establishment of the so-called trilateral security partnership between the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia, and their advancement of cooperation on nuclear submarines and other cutting-edge military technologies. We have consistently opposed the creation of bloc confrontations, the escalation and proliferation of risks, and the intensification of arms races. With that statement, Beijing once again drew a clear line between what it considers legitimate trade cooperation and what it sees as militarized containment. The message was unmistakable. China perceives the convergence of economic and defense policies among Western allies as an emerging front in a new strategic competition. In the past 2 years, AUKUS, initially focused on nuclear submarine technology, has expanded to cover artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and hypersonic systems. Analysts in Beijing argue this evolution transforms AUKUS from a defense pact into a full-spectrum security framework that redefines power in the Indo-Pacific region. Against this backdrop, the minerals agreement between the US and Australia appears to Beijing not merely as an economic initiative, but as a component of a larger Western alignment. The Foreign Ministry's response reflects China's anxiety over what it calls supply chain weaponization, the process of linking industrial dependencies to political alliances. Chinese media outlets echoed the ministry's position. Commentaries in People's Daily and Global Times argued that Washington's new partnerships aim to sideline China's role in high-tech production, much as earlier semiconductor restrictions had done. The editorials described the Minerals Pact as a strategic encirclement under the guise of economic diversification. Still, China's official line remains measured. The government is keen to project stability and confidence rather than confrontation. Economists close to Beijing's policy circles note that China maintains unrivaled refining capacity for many strategic minerals, controlling more than 70% of global rare earth processing. They argue that the world's dependency on Chinese supply is not easily replaceable. While Beijing criticizes the new Western agreements, it is also accelerating its own diversification strategies. Over the past year, China has expanded investments in African and South American mining ventures, seeking to secure raw materials beyond the reach of Western influence. Officials insist these moves are driven by market efficiency and mutual benefit, not politics. The formation of global production and supply chains is the result of market forces and business decisions. Countries rich in key mineral resources should play an active role in ensuring the security and stability of industrial and supply chains and in maintaining normal economic and trade cooperation. The Chinese side has repeatedly stated its position regarding the establishment of the so-called trilateral security partnership between the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia, and their advancement of cooperation on nuclear submarines and other cutting-edge military technologies. We have consistently opposed the creation of bloc confrontations, the escalation and proliferation of risks, and the intensification of arms races. At the press conference, Guo Jiakun's remarks hinted at both reassurance and warning. He reminded that the foundation of modern trade rests on trust, not coercion. The subtext was clear. Countries should not turn supply chains into instruments of geopolitical leverage. Meanwhile, the Australian government has defended its cooperation with the US, portraying it as a step toward economic security in an uncertain global landscape. Prime Minister Albanese has said that the minerals deal complements Australia's long-standing commitment to sustainability and clean energy transition. He insists it is not directed at any one country. However, in Beijing, that explanation has found little traction. Chinese analysts argue that linking resource cooperation with the AUKUS security alliance makes it impossible to separate economics from geopolitics. They warn that Australia risks further straining its already fragile relationship with its largest trading partner. For the United States, this new alignment is part of a broader effort to reduce vulnerabilities revealed during the pandemic and recent supply disruptions. Washington's policy of de-risking rather than decoupling seeks to maintain trade ties with China while shifting critical dependencies elsewhere. Beijing, however, sees the distinction as rhetorical, a semantic cover for what it views as deliberate exclusion. Guo Jiakun reiterated that China welcomes fair competition but rejects containment under cooperative slogans. He said that maintaining open markets benefits all nations and that no country should seek absolute security at the expense of others' development. In the broader strategic picture, the US-Australia minerals deal and AUK-US cooperation together represent a convergence of economic and military policy. Analysts describe it as a two-track approach, securing resources while strengthening defense integration across the Pacific. For China, that combination poses both economic and security challenges. Beijing fears that the West's push to diversify mineral supplies will not only undermine its trade dominance, but also diminish its leverage in future technological standards. That, in turn, could limit its ability to influence the next generation of global industries, from semiconductors to electric mobility. Market reactions have been swift. Prices of certain rare earths and lithium compounds saw modest increases following the announcement of the US-Australia Pact. Industry observers note that while Western projects could reduce dependence on China, they will take years to match its current processing capacity. Until then, global manufacturers remain tied to Chinese supply networks. China's foreign ministry avoided mention of any retaliatory steps, but reminded that Beijing reserves the right to safeguard its legitimate interests. The statement mirrors the calibrated diplomatic tone China has adopted since Washington intensified its economic partnerships across Asia and the Pacific. At the same time, China has tightened export regulations on specific high-tech materials, including gallium and germanium, a move interpreted as a signal that Beijing retains powerful levers in the global technology chain. The interplay between these policies reflects a delicate balance. China's desire to appear as a responsible global stakeholder, while reminding the world of its indispensable role in industrial production. Regional reactions have varied. Japan and South Korea have cautiously supported the diversification of supply chains, seeing it as an opportunity to stabilize their own industries. Indonesia, one of the world's top nickel producers, has called for dialogue to prevent new trade barriers, warning that competition over resources could fragment Asian economies. ASEAN officials have also voiced concerns in private that rival resource alliances could deepen divisions within the region. They fear that the emergence of exclusive economic blocs, one centered around the United States, another around China, could turn Southeast Asia into a contested buffer zone. For Beijing, the challenge is as much diplomatic as economic. China must reassure developing nations that its model of cooperation remains inclusive, even as it counters Western frameworks that increasingly tie commerce to security. The Foreign Ministry's messaging, therefore, seeks to blend restraint with resolve, opposing bloc politics while reaffirming China's commitment to global trade. Behind the formality of Guo Jiakun's words lies a broader narrative, one that reflects China's evolving strategy in a world where resource control equals strategic power. The government is promoting what it calls green development independence, investing in domestic extraction and advanced refining technologies. This policy is designed to reduce vulnerability to sanctions and external shocks. Yet China also recognizes that full self-sufficiency is unrealistic. Its officials have repeatedly called for cooperative frameworks within the United Nations and World Trade Organization that ensure equitable access to raw materials. In Beijing's view, transparency, not containment, is the key to stability. The US and Australia, for their part, insist their new framework promotes precisely that: transparency, accountability, and sustainability. The Biden and Trump administrations alike have argued that past over-reliance on single-country supply chains created unacceptable risks. China counters that monopolizing diversification under US leadership is itself a contradiction. At today's press briefing, Guo Jiakun summarized that perspective without escalating rhetoric. He said that the world should learn from history and resist creating new divisions under the banner of cooperation. His statement, while measured, conveyed China's growing unease over a pattern it believes is aimed at strategic containment. Observers in Beijing see these comments as part of a larger diplomatic choreography, a way to position China as the voice of multilateralism against what it perceives as Western bloc building. The message resonates across much of the developing world, where many governments depend on Chinese financing for infrastructure and industrial growth. As the competition for resources intensifies, the critical minerals market has become a new front in global geopolitics. What began as an environmental and technological issue is now an instrument of statecraft, one that ties clean energy policy to national security. In the closing moments of the press conference, Guo Jiakun declined to answer whether China would impose new export controls in response to the US-Australia Pact. Instead, he reiterated that Beijing will take all necessary measures to protect national interests. It was a familiar phrase, firm, deliberate, and open to interpretation. For China, maintaining control over its mineral wealth is not just about economics. It is about preserving leverage in an era of shifting alliances. For Washington and its partners, diversifying supply chains is equally strategic, a matter of ensuring that no single nation can hold the world's clean energy future in its hands. In that sense, the dispute over critical minerals mirrors the wider contest shaping the Indo-Pacific. It is not a clash of ideologies, but of dependencies, an effort by each side to secure the materials, markets, and technologies that will define the decades ahead. As the press hall emptied, the message from Beijing remained consistent. Cooperation, yes. Confrontation, no. But as global power balances evolve, even the language of cooperation is increasingly strategic. From critical minerals to nuclear submarines, the competition between China and the West now extends deep into the machinery of modern industry, where trade, technology, and defense are inseparably linked. China's latest response serves as a reminder that beneath the calm tone of diplomacy lies a new kind of rivalry, one fought not on battlefields, but across the supply chains of the 21st century. Beijing's warning is subtle yet unmistakable. Nations that seek stability must resist turning commerce into confrontation. And as the world races to build the future of clean energy and defense innovation, China intends to remain at the very heart of it. This is a developing story from Beijing, so where the Foreign Ministry's measured statements reveal not weakness but strategy. In the struggle over critical minerals and technological dominance, every word, every alliance, and every trade route has become part of a larger contest for power.